Today I'm going to tell you guys how I financed a purchase of 30 units. Some of it was with my own money, some of it was owner financing, some of it was traditional methods, bridge financing, a couple other methods. But I wanted to share that with you today because I know a lot of you guys want to get started in real estate. Some of you guys think you're really far away from getting started in real estate. You don't need as much money as you think to get started in real estate. So I kind of want to go through my journey. In the last 2 years, I've acquired 30 apartments. And I'll tell you a little bit about the ups and downs, but I really want to start from day one, how I acquired my real estate portfolio, which now includes, like I said, 30 apartments, some commercial units, some residential units, a lot of land, and I'm going to run it down. Hopefully you guys learned something, and that way I can audit myself too on what I did. Okay, guys? So I'm going to start with my biggest mistakes, and I'll push this whiteboard back up so you guys can kind of view what I'm doing. But I'll start with my biggest mistake. So my first piece of land was $1,300. I'm sorry, I sold it. We're going to put a sold section here and a purchase section. This one was actually $300. So I bought this for cash. I used my student loans when I was in law school. I saw myself racking up a pretty big debt there, and I realized, man, maybe I should invest some of this money. So that was my first piece of land. It was a 1/4 acre in Arkansas. So I think this is Arkansas. After I bought that, I kept shopping, and what I would do is the first one I did, I bought it on eBay. I looked to make sure I had a warranty deed. I looked in the county to make sure that all the title was clean, and I bought that one for $300. After that, I learned a little bit more. I thought I did anyway, and I purchased 6 parcels for $600. So this is number one. This is another 6. This cost me $600, so $100 each. They were in the middle of nowhere in Arizona. Now, some of these I sold for $300 each. I didn't sell all of them. So I bought them for $100 and I sold it for $300. So this was kind of my first foray into the market. And then I'll kind of speed this up. I spent $1,300 on 10 acres in Nevada. This was one parcel. I still have that. Bought a couple more. I want to say I bought another, something like, I did this deal again. So I ended up spending another $1,200 to get another 12 of these in Arizona. Again, I was selling these for $300 each. Okay. So before you knew it, then I bought one in Michigan, Lakes of the North, Michigan. I spent $750 on there. So I'm going to tell you guys exactly what I learned from some of these processes in Michigan. This was a general warranty deed, and I'll tell you why this is important in a second. This was a general warranty deed. These were general warranty deed, general warranty deed. This was also general warranty deed, but this had an HOA. So this was on this fancy place that had tennis courts and volleyball courts and an airport, a campground, in-ground pool, right? Inside pool, outside pool, a whole bunch of stuff. But those HOA fees started racking up. So the $650 looked cheap here, but I was paying $250 a year in HOA fees, then like another $100 in taxes. Now, some people may say that's not a lot. On these parcels, I was paying $7 a year on taxes, but I got whacked with like $100 in back taxes. That's why this guy was selling them. My fault. Didn't do the due diligence, right? The Nevada property has been one of my best, 10 acres, and I think my taxes there are $16 a year, so I can hold on to that forever. But this HOA fee started killing me, especially because I wasn't selling it. Okay. Michigan, and then I did 3 deals in New Mexico, which I got for $0. They came with these deals. So every time I bought 5 of these deals, this guy gave me a New Mexico property for free. The back taxes on them were like $200 a piece, so they weren't free. But if you buy land and you put it in a new LLC, you don't have to pay the back taxes right away. So a lot of people buy land with back taxes and then flip it with back taxes on it, and the new owner is responsible. Okay, so I got that land for $0, but really it was $200. But I put this in an LLC, so I didn't pay that for a couple of years. Finally paid those off just to pay them off. Some investors never pay them off. They just let it keep going, and they push that forward. I haven't sold any of these, and I haven't sold any of these, and the Nevada one I haven't sold. So that's my land portfolio. So when I was done, I had about 25, 30 properties, something like that. And this was my first mistake in real estate, right? Which is I kept saying I want to be a real estate investor. I want to be a real estate investor. And if you're not selling these, you're not making any money. I probably should have done a better job of selling these faster, but I'll tell you one of the reasons why I didn't. Like for example, the Nevada property literally borders a gold mine, right? So I realized that some of these I was flipping for so much, like the Arkansas property I bought for 300, sold it for 1,300. Sounds great until you start realizing, shit, man, maybe that thing had a good view. Because for the a full disclaimer, I never visited any of these properties. I bought them all offline. I never went out there. I live on the East Coast, so I never even made it out to these properties. But you start realizing, man, maybe that thing had a really good view. Maybe that thing was worth 5,000, 6,000 because of a certain attribute. Maybe I could have marketed it better and sold it to the neighbor, which would have allowed me to get more money. So this was my kind of first foray into the real estate, and it taught me a few things. It taught me to be more strategic. It taught me if you're going to flip land, you have to keep selling it. You can't really hold on to it unless you're leasing it out in a farming scenario, which I couldn't do in most of these because they were either in a residential location or they were desert. So it also taught me that there was no money coming in. There was a lot of money coming out with the taxes every single year, but if I didn't sell them, there was no money coming in. But it did give me this crazy credibility in the real estate game because all of a sudden I went from having nothing. This was probably, I want to say it took me a total of 6 months. And I think the total price that I spent was somewhere around $7,000 on land. But when I told people I owned property, and it was Nevada, Arizona, Arkansas, Michigan, New Mexico, so 5 states, and then later I bought in New York, upstate New York, I bought 8.9 acres. That was more expensive. That cost me 7,800. I just sold that for 36,000 on a land contract. A land contract is when somebody gives you a down payment and they pay you monthly over the course of time. So I made a killing there, right, guys? But I had to sell it. And when I wanted to get into real estate, I really thought, I want to hold properties and they'll pay me for them and I'll grow this portfolio. But this kind of struck me wrong. Number one, I was paying a lot of taxes. I couldn't monetize it unless I sold it. I didn't have enough farming experience or contacts in these areas to kind of lease that land out, and I didn't know enough. So my first lesson here was, number one, you get what you wanted, because I kept saying to myself, I'm going to own land in all 50 states. By the time I got to state 6, I had to stop myself because I would have kept going. I would have got the rest of the 44. Maybe one day I will, just for shits and giggles. But I realized that wasn't the goal. It's the wrong goal. My goal was to acquire income producing property. And that's where I'll take you to the next one. But this thing built a lot of credibility. Imagine walking into a room, and I'm a businessman, I have a lot of other ventures, but imagine walking into a room and saying, I own 30 plus properties in 6 states. They don't know how much I paid for them. They don't know I paid $300. They don't know how I paid $100 fees. They don't know I got these for free, right? So their mind, if I don't tell them, their mind just goes, and it built a lot of credibility, which would help me later in my career, and I'll tell you about that right now. So now I want to talk about a little bit about how I acquired my residential portfolio slash commercial portfolio. So I just came on the heels of, let me flip this around real quick so I can kind of give you the timeline. I'm out of law school. I have bought these all my last semester, first year out of law school. I bought this about 3 years later, 2 years later. So we're in 2000, I graduated in 2012. I bought these. 2015, I think I bought this. 2016. So now I'm coming up and I'm camping up on this piece of land. It was the first piece of land I actually walked on that I owned. So I owned over 30 properties before I got to walk on my own land. So I have been coming up to, and this is Salisbury Center, if anyone wants to look it up. Salisbury Center, New York. It's up here in Herkimer County. I was coming up here, and I had always told myself, at this point I had realized, Nick, land investing is probably not your route. You don't like this constant flip process. Maybe it's time to rethink this real estate thing. So I said, if I ever found a piece of land, that a building that I could afford, that I could live in, rent out, and work in, it would be the optimal situation, and I would buy it if I could afford it. And sure enough, coming camping up here in Herkimer, New York, 246 North Main Street, and this is Herkimer. I bought my first 4-unit deal. This was $75,000. I paid cash. Biggest mistake of my life. If I knew what I knew now, right? But do it how you can do it. There are no rules, right? If you can do it a certain way, do it. Don't worry about how it should be done. Worry about getting it done. So 75,000, and this was a 4-unit deal. Needed renovation on 2 of the units. So I rented out 1 unit right away. Then I rented out the commercial space on the floor, which we're actually in right now. And Then I moved to a unit that was incomplete, finished it, and then I rented that out, and then I finished another unit, and then I fully rented that out, and then the guy on the first floor moved out, so now I had three apartments rented and the floor empty. I moved my office here, so you can do the math. The average rent here is 650 a month, okay, and I collect that pretty reasonably among three tenants. So what's that? Seven plus 1350 a month, 50 a month in income. Okay. So what's that? 13, 16,000 a year that I make off of this building that I paid 75,000 for, right? Somebody check my math. And if I fully rent this out, it would be more, right? So that's 246, 4 unit deal. Right after that, I was super excited. I wanted to focus. I went to a real estate mentor, said, what should I do? He said, make sure you're buying them all close by. This is just advice I took. So I saw another deal, 127 North Main Street, an empty building. Might as well be a shell. I still haven't rented that out. I paid $8,900 for that. It is about 15,000, 20,000 square feet. The big building. Big building was empty. Put another probably 3 grand into this building, but that one's empty. So this is the only one that's cash flowing, right? And now I'm realizing, hey, Nick, you might be reverting back to this old real estate investment self where you're not buying buildings. So I convinced the neighbor. So now, timeline. So, and I think this is very important. This is how I continue to strategize about my deals. I'm leveraged to the max out of law school. The bank's not going to give me any money. That's partly why I bought this building cash, okay, and this building cash. But then I realized maybe there's a chance I can own or finance something. So I got buddy with the guy next door who owns 6 buildings on the street, and COVID hits. And I have been kind of egging him on that I would love to buy it. He said, how much? I said, $1 down. And, I'll give you payments for the rest of your life, right? I don't have the money, man. I didn't have the money. I'm like, just give me a break. Give me a deal. And COVID hits, and he finally gives me an offer on 236 and 240. So there's 2 buildings now combined. This could be broken down, by the way. This building could be broken down into 1 unit, 4 units, 2 units. It's such a big building, but let's just call it 2 units because there's an upstairs and a downstairs. And I have a strategy in depleted parts of America where I think if we buy cheap units and we give them more square footage for just a little incremental cost, it'll serve really well up here because there's a lot of small houses and buildings in these areas where the Rust Belt was, where it was once industrious, and now it's kind of people have left to go to major cities. So 236, 240. So ends up being, remember, this is a 4 unit, this is a 2 unit. This one ends up being a 15 apartments. So this is a big leap for me, guys. 15 apartments and 1, 2, 3 storefronts, commercial storefronts. I'll save you the specific numbers, but I want to say it was at 60% occupancy. Okay, and he gives me this. The total price is 500,000, but he says I'll take 50,000 down. So I really only paid 50,000 for this, and I'll tell you where I got the money in 1 second. And an interest-only loan for 7 years that I need to refinance to get out of that. But then I have possession of the property. So here's the question, right? This is not a hefty enough return to save $50,000. I know it's hard to save money. So here, what I did was I have a business that I'm running and I make all my money through PayPal. So every time I invoice through PayPal. So PayPal saw that I was credible for a certain line of credit, and they let me take out $36,000 in advance basically on my sales. I took that $36,000. It was March when he told me he would work out this deal with me. I took out the loan at the beginning of March. The stock market started crashing with COVID. I took the $36,000 and I bet it on an inverse ETF. Basically, it's betting that the stock market goes down. And because COVID hit, everything was going down, right? People were panicking. So I bet it on what they call a 3X, and this is kind of a side note, 3X inverse ETF. And basically for every point that the Dow Jones went down, my stock went up 3 points. So I put 36,000, I took out the $36,000 loan. I put it in an inverse ETF. It got me 40,000. I worked my butt off and saved every penny I had from my consulting business that I operate. And I think I got up to $4,700. And then I took out another loan because I didn't have enough for the 50,000 and the closing costs. I took out another loan from a family friend, $10,000 3-year loan at 7% interest. Okay. Now this is something they don't teach you in school. They definitely don't recommend, which is, when you go and take out a loan, they say 50,000 down. If you go to a traditional bank, if you go to the bank, they want to know where you got that $50,000 from. They don't want you to take out a loan for that down payment because you're about to take out a loan for them. So they don't want two loans on the property. But guess what? It worked. It worked. Okay. These payments, interest only payments on the 500,000. So I ended up closing. Okay. These payments ended up being 3,000 a month. When I acquired the building, it was making 5,000 a month. I now have it to 6,800 a month. And I think we are only at 85% occupancy. So we still have some room for growth there. When we're fully rented out there, we'll be at about 9,000 a month minus the 3. Your gross is 6 minus utilities and insurance and a bunch of other stuff. You're at 2 or 3 a month. But this was another 15, 16, 17, 18. So I bought that deal. Now my cash flow is good. There's no mortgage on this property. There's no mortgage on this property. I still have my side hustle, or my main business, I should say. And I save up for a couple months, and my very next deal was 28,000. This is we're gonna call this Smith Street. It's not a street. This was 28K, 3-unit, fully rented. Fully rented. Okay. I took out an SBA loan on my business. Used that money there. Okay. A lot of money that's not supposed to be used for this and that and this and that and that. Get a hold of the money, get a hold of the asset. Worry about that stuff later, man. If you got the money to pay it off, ain't no one gonna care. All they want is their money back. So make sure you can get their money back. 28,000, 3-unit, fully rented. It is making 12, I think it's 15, call it 1,500. I think it's a little bit over 1,500 a month. So 15,000, 18,000 a year basically on this building. So that's Smith Street. What else did I acquire? I'm trying to think for you guys. Smith Street. Then I acquired 2 houses almost the same way. So now I'm realizing, at this point, okay, let me just put this here, 3-unit. Okay. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 24, 25, 26, 27. We're at 27 units here so far. Okay, guys, 27 units. So now I'm realizing I like leverage. I like cash flow. But these deals, for the record, are not easy to find, right? So people are like, man, that looks easy. It is easy once you find the deal. Well, finding the deal, I feel like I got lucky. This building was also empty, so it took me a year to get this fully rented. So there was carrying costs on top of that 75,000 and a few renovation costs. But like this deal that I know, like for 8,900, pretty sure I could sell that building today for 65,000, 7,000. I stalked the internet. Like the day that thing hit the internet, I have an alert on my phone for commercial properties in certain square footage, certain prices, certain areas. I was the first to see it, first to put an offer on it, right? This didn't even hit the market. 236, 240. This didn't even hit the market, right? This was me talking to the owner all the time, trying to convince him to give me a deal. So that's how that opportunity came about. And then Smith Street, same thing. I was stalking the market. I got the alert. And no, actually, I'm sorry. This was not. Smith Street was how I acquired the next buildings, which is I drove around and I was looking for for sale by owner signs that were not advertised on the internet. And sure enough, I found this one, and he was willing to sell it for 28. He wanted 38 for it, and I talked him down. So I found that driving around, which happened the same way for my next deal, which is the house I currently live in, a 1-unit. I want to say it's 4,500 square feet. And that one I bought for 5,000 down, and my payments are $420 a month. Okay, I can rent that out probably for 800, 900. And I probably will rent that out for 800, 900 at some point. So that was a $40,000 deal. So now I'm at deal 28. This is 28. And then 29, 30, I found on Facebook. And at this point, I realized that this guy had sold me this one unit that I bought for 5,000 down, 420 a month. I started realizing something um, about owner financing deals. They were willing to owner finance in a couple scenarios, at least from my experience. This guy was in a tough spot, tough predicament. I knew he needed cash, and we had just hit COVID, and I was really harping on, like, if I was trying to buy a deal from you during COVID, all I kept telling you was, man, the world's ending. You should sell me this property. So I was really a fearmonger there to kind of help close that deal. And then here, what I realized was that this guy was really willing to take 5,000 down, 420 a month because he bought it at a foreclosure for like 4 grand, 5 grand. He put some money into it, but he was holding on to other deals. Same thing with this guy. They were holding, and this guy actually, and this guy. This was a nonprofit, but they were all basically holding on to a bunch of properties, and these guys were duds. Like this one was empty. It was costing them money, right? This one was a total headache for the guy who sold it for me. This one was empty, right? The Smith Street was a headache, and this one, the 3 unit fully rented was a headache for the owner. This 1 unit deal was empty. The guy was out of state, and it was just easier for him to unload. He had another house right like down the road that he lived in when he came up into town. So it was just empty. He had dumped too much money into it. He wanted same thing with the next deal. The next deal was a flipper, and same deal, 5K down. This was a 2 unit, 2 units, 5K down, and this one I got my mortgage down to 380 a month. Okay, the total purchase price on these two, this one was 40K and the other one was 40K. Okay, so I didn't spend 40K, I spent 5,000 down. This one needs rehab, um, but I have sufficient cash flow to rehab these units. So this is how I purchased it. Some of the things I learned were I love guys that buy at foreclosures. And they're like, I'm sure the follow-up question for some of you guys is, why don't you buy at foreclosures? I do buy at foreclosures, but you're not at every one. And if somebody bought a deal at $5,000, $6,000, $8,000, and can now finance it to you for 40, and the numbers make sense, and for example, this deal, my mortgage is 380. It's a 2 unit deal. When I'm fully rented, that building would make 1,500 a month. Why would I spend the whole 40 grand or the 8 grand to buy that building when I can finance it? And I know it's available and I can find it. And these deals are not easy to find. They're not easy to find. So that's how I acquire my properties. I continue with this strategy of owner financing and finding the right deals, kind of finding the players in the mix. And what I've realized is that once you hit up a few guys that own, let's say, multi-unit deals or commercial deals, it's a pretty tight circle. It's a pretty small circle. They all know each other, and one guy definitely owns more. So, like this guy that sold me the last deal, he's got another 30 units that he can unload. This guy's got another 100 units he could unload with me. These guys have more units. So, kind of finding the players and working out deals with them works good, especially if they're in the business, because then later on you might be able to renegotiate the purchase of more property, which helps. So currently, we did the numbers the other day. We have 750,000 in mortgages, and the net value on the real estate at a 15 cap rate is 1.41 million. You guys can check up what a cap rate is. It's basically how much revenue it produces. So that's how I did it. Hope that helped you guys learn something. You know, I had student loan debt when I acquired all of this. So a lot of people are like, man, I'm in massive debt. I don't know if I can do it. And by the way, I could have just as easily started here, right, on this 5 unit deal. So some people are like, I don't have 75,000 to start, right, or 89,000. I took out a loan for the 50,000. So this deal literally cost me, I think, only a couple $1,000s of my own money because I took out a loan for the 36, right, and I traded it up, and then I took out another 10,000 to get to the 50. So I took out a loan for the 50, and then I took out and the 50 was a down payment for the 500,000, which put me into a mortgage of 3,000, but I already had a cash flow of 5,000. So I literally closed this deal the 31st, and I was in there the next day. So I cut him a $50,000 check, and the next day I collected the 5,000 in rent. and a whole bunch of headache and responsibility too. Don't forget about that. I hope this was helpful, guys. Follow the channel if you think it was helpful. Share with anybody you think would find this information useful. Comment underneath if you guys have any questions. I'll kind of push this up. I don't know how useful my kick and scratch writing is. For those of you guys who don't know who I am, my name is Nick. I went to business school, went to law school, graduated both. I now operate a couple online businesses, thebusinessplanningguru.com. And look, actually, these are some of my domains. If you look over here, those are some of my land domains that I first started, and these are my other business domains now. So subscribe to the channel if this was helpful. Check me out if you need a business plan, if you need any businesses formed, if you need a website formed, hit me up. And stay motivated, never quit, keep learning. We'll talk soon, guys.